Welcome to Focus on Business, a podcast show for photographers with me, your host, Jane Goodrich. I'm talking to successful photographers so you can learn from our experiences and have the business of your dreams. So join us and let's focus on business. Hi, so welcome to today's episode of Focus on Business. I am so excited to welcome Chris Shabay to our podcast. He's a very talented senior photographer and also an educator and helps other photographers with their business. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, so tell us, and your accent I love, so I could hear your accent all day. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your photography business.
So from Texas all my life, so I get that a lot. So I'll probably need a translator for some of this stuff, but large Texas accent. The way I started my photography business was a little unique. I started in a country called Sierra Leone, Africa. I was coming off an adoption of my son. I adopted a child from Africa and 18 years ago, and he was 2 years old at the time, and now he's 20 and just an awesome young man. But once I went over and visited Africa for the first time, I just fell in love with it. There was an orphanage over there that I just couldn't leave. I wish I could take home all the kids, but I could only take home one. And so I made it my life's mission at the time to start a 501c3. And I got a camera and just started taking pictures of these kids. I'd never picked up a camera before. I'd never had aspirations of being a photographer, didn't think I was a photographer. But in telling these kids stories, many years later, probably about 7 or 8 years of just taking so many pictures in Africa, people started commenting how they liked my work. And when they would say, I like your work, it was really confusing to me because I didn't think my photography was work or was good enough to be called work. I was like, you mean my pictures? They say, yeah, you ought to become a professional at that. Well, anybody knows when you're, a missionary, you have to ask people for money all the time. I did not want to do that, to ask people to support me. I wanted to support it myself. So I really did. I gave it a shot. And, lots of things learned the hard way, which is why I think I'm sitting here now. I went through the process of giving away way too much for free. I would call myself a healing people pleaser. I'm still progress. So I just don't like confrontation. And so not liking confrontation and wanting to get business and giving stuff away for free is a recipe kind of for disaster for a starting photographer, but it's something that all photographers have to go through. I went through it and made every single mistake I could possibly make. But the good news is I came out on the other side and learned a few things in my business. It is thriving now. And now I try to help people kind of going through the same thing that I did.
Yeah, not making the same mistakes that you did. I love that. I love that. I mean, what's good about it is you came out the other side. Unfortunately, some people don't come out the other side. They kind of give up. So I think to try and shorten that learning curve is the best thing to do. And I love the healing people pleaser. I think we are as photographers, we are, interacting with people, like it's very intimate, like trying to get that. You definitely just want to please them. So it's something that you have to constantly work on. Still the same. I've been doing it for 14 years. I'm like, did they like the images? I just sent the gallery. I'm like, are you crazy? Right. They booked you 10 times. And I'm like, please like it. So, I think we all have a path to take as well. But like, if you were to go back and say, hey, Chris, don't do this, what would be the one thing if you were to travel back in time and be like, really, that's the worst thing you could be doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really easy question for me to ask. It's not what I wouldn't do. It's what I would do.
Okay.
I would have started thinking like an entrepreneur a lot sooner than I did. I didn't know anything about photography. And so the only really thing I did is I looked up photographers I really liked and tried to mimic them, whether it was their posing or which is not a bad strategy because I really looked up to some photographers and, I figured out where I wanted to to specialize in that. I wish I had done the same thing with entrepreneurs. I study a lot of entrepreneurs the last 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. I read a lot more books. I try to learn what successful people in a business do, how they find where they're unique. And I found that in studying entrepreneurs and successful people, and I'm talking, people in success, we have to define our own success.
Right.
I have to say, people define success, through money. It's not, so the people I studied were making a lot of money, but my success was something, completely different. What I did learn from entrepreneurs that I wish I learned a long time ago was that income always chases impact. And so I really once I started to serve my clients better, instead of thinking of them, as transactions, entrepreneurs think there's always a problem to solve. When I first started photography, I go, well, I don't have any problem to solve. I'm taking people's pictures. Like, what problems do they? When you start to think like that, you realize how many problems people really do have, how they feel when they get in front of the camera, how they, are they apprehensive? What are their insecurities? So you have a lot of what location do they want to shoot? You have a lot of problems to solve. So had I thought like an entrepreneur back then, I would be years and years ahead of where I am now.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that. I think photography, because, you can have a camera at home and you can pop up a Facebook page and be a photographer. And I think the end result that we all see from photographers is the end result. It's not the back end work. It's sort of hidden. There's a lot of hidden work. It's like, for every hour of shooting, there's like 9 to 12 hours of back end work of running your business. A lot of photographers get into it thinking it's a job, but really it's a business. And so actually, once you sort of have that mindset of it's a business and you're an entrepreneur, it's a big difference than I'm just a photographer, right? So I love that. I know you're Texas. I know you're Texas for life. But if you had to, all right, you're going to move you to Chicago, Illinois. Like, you're moving in 3 months. What would be the first thing that you would do to make sure your business was set up?
Well, the first thing I would do that I think is the most important, and it's most important whether you stay, move somewhere else, or anything else, which I try to help new photographers all the time, is you have to know your competition. I study my competition so much. It's just one of the things that's become a habit of mine, an everyday thing. I know in my area what they charge, what my competition charges, what promotions they have. I follow them on Instagram, what they use for lead magnets. Like, I really do know everything about the competition. So I'm able to either do something more or better or find my unique spot amongst what I'm dealing with. So if you're moving to another state, like if I moved to Chicago, the first thing I would do is I would obviously know the city where I'm moving. So I would study, Chicago senior photographers. I'd find out who's the best. I would read, what people are saying about them in reviews, what people like about them, just really studying my competition so I could develop a plan. I think where most people fall short is they just don't have a strategy. Mm-hmm. And I would have a strategy for how I was going to do a business based on what was already there and how I could find my unique spot within that city and the competition I had.
I 100% agree. I think that that's actually really clever, because you could have a very similar style going in there, very similar promotions to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And they've been there 10 years. And what you're doing in your current market, because you're different than everybody else, isn't going to work. So you might have to sort of tailor your business or your marketing or promotions based on the area they're moving to. It could be great because you'll be like, no one's doing senior photography. The ball is wide open. Or there's these people, one's quite similar to me. How am I going to differentiate myself and be different? And when you talk about following the competition, I will say it's really good to know your competition, but not also go down the rabbit hole of, oh, they're charging less or they're doing this less. It's just like what you have to do is figure out what's going to make you unique in your area. And, I actually unfollow it's funny you say that, but I've been here for 14 years. So I know my business is established. I'll know if another photographer comes along. I already know where I stand. But if you're new, you should really look at your area. But then if it for me, it would start getting me a little bit down. So I was like, I'm going to unfollow. I just don't want to see. If you had to pick, marketing is such a wide topic. If you had to pick what's your favorite form of marketing for you at this moment in Dallas, Texas, marketing to senior photographers, or one that works well for all of your your other photographers that you coach, what would be the one that you think, hey, that's my go-to?
I tell photographers getting into this all the time, I would rather leave my client with a really good story than ask them for a good review. So I'm very proud to say that 9 out of 10 of my clients are referred by somebody else. And so for me, I try to give them the best experience possible. I put a lot of time and effort into getting to know my client because I want to give them a story to tell. So if I can exceed expectations, and so imagine like this, if somebody's talking to another friend, they're talking about, photography, who did you hire for your photography? And somebody says, well, I hired Chris Shabay and he was really nice. He's kind, he took the time to explain the process. That's a review. I want them to say, oh my gosh, Chris, he had an extra location. He took more time than he really thought. And you wouldn't believe this. He surprised my daughter. He told us, to bring our dog at the end of the shoot. And and they turned out to be the best picture. So the difference between doing good enough to get a review and leaving them with a story that they'll remember forever, that's truly, most honest way I can answer, that's the way I market. I give every single client that steps in front of my camera, I make sure they have a story to tell their friends, because that's what spreads the most in my community. And that's really, really just worked for me as far as staying booked and staying overbooked and all that good stuff for the stories I create for my clients.
I love that, because I think that's an interesting way of sort of putting it, we talk about surprise and delight, or like under promise, over deliver, but like to actually say, to go into it purposefully of like, okay, I'm going to do this shoot. What is the thing that they're going to walk away and tell their friends about this shoot? And it could be the same thing. I'm a newborn photographer and I prep my kids and like they'll walk away with, oh my goodness, she gave me so many tips about, XYZ. But I love the way that you just say, I'm going to go in there so I have a story for my clients to share. That's genius. Sure. So how do you, you say you're booked, how do you manage your work life, like your shoot life? Do you have a typical schedule? This is sort of getting into sort of like, do people have schedules? Do they not? Like, do they wing it? Do you outsource type of thing? So tell us about a typical week, or if there is a typical week.
Sure. And this is probably my favorite question to answer. And it's probably the hardest for photographers to grasp, because I don't think anybody can work without a schedule. You can, but the amount of success you're going to have being on a schedule and not being on a schedule is night and day to me. I spent a lot of years not being on a schedule. I would wake up and do what I love to do first and that kind of thing. I really didn't have a list of things to do. When I started I tell people all the time, I try to win every morning. And when I say I try to win every morning, I get up at the same time. When I go to work in the morning, it's a clean desk. I don't have the problems there for yesterday to remind me that I was so busy and tired yesterday. I fix my coffee at the same time. I have routines every single day, fundamentals to be successful. I do those every single day. I have to write stuff down. I tell people all the time, goals, schedule, doesn't matter, thoughts, if they're not written down, they don't count. And it's really hard to get photographers to write down their goals, to write down their schedule, to write down stuff. But the difference that it makes if you really do keep to a tight schedule. Because, photographers, we know this. Photographers all the time say, well, look, I'm working part-time. I really just want to try to go full-time. Well, they don't really want to go full-time. They want to get paid full-time to not work as much. And it doesn't work that way. If you were to start a business, or you were to go to work, and you were a entry level starting a full-time job, you're going to get 2 weeks vacation and all major holidays. We all know that. So are you willing to work 40 hours a week and only take 10 days off your photography that's full time.
Right.
So it takes that to be successful. That it almost takes more than that first to be successful. And so it's not that people want to work full time. They want to find this quick fix and something so they can have more time off. And I think that's what's really tough, and why a lot of photographers either give up or fail is because they're passionate about photography. But just like you said, photography is about 10% of what we do. You better be passionate about the other 90% of the business. Yeah. I tell people all the time, I'm really not passionate about photography. Like if I didn't have to take pictures, I am super passionate about what photography does for me, because I'm really passionate about making people feel good about themselves. I'm passionate about helping other photographers. So I have to take pictures in order to give me that feeling of purpose. So, and I think a lot of people really don't know what they're thinking, because they're so passionate about photography and passionate about taking pictures. And I'm not sure a lot of that, I know they love it, but they're really, most of them are more passionate about what can this do for me?
Yeah. What I found is also it's a lot of overwhelm, right? So and
a lot of overwhelm. You're right.
If you're getting into it and you're still juggling, maybe you're working full time and it's part time, it is quite hard to schedule. Or if you have a newborn at home, and even for me, I was just I went into it. Mine was less about that. I mean, I was working a lot, like 80, 90 hours a week. So it was less about that being willing to work, but more about, I was afraid of saying, I work these hours, because I was afraid of someone saying, I need you here, and then I would lose business. But I realized over the time that's not going to work. I have a set schedule now. Took me a long time to these are my working hours. I don't work on the weekends. I spend time with my kid on the weekend. But it took me a while, but it was more of a little bit of an insecurity of I just want to be available. My newborns are going to arrive at any time. And, and that really hindered me, versus I'm going to photograph Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, Mondays editing and marketing, Fridays, whatever, trying to balance the schedule where I'm doing my marketing and it is on the schedule and business side and responding to inquiries, versus winging it. Because then you're right, it just never gets done. And it's just I know it's in the back of my head. I'm not writing it down. And so writing it down, and I will say it's hard to get into a schedule, but if you can, start even blocking off time for marketing, blocking off time, writing things down is key, because then you'll start, okay, I can get into a schedule, or just even, I'm only going to photograph this, because then it makes you have Mondays are for marketing, Wednesdays are for social media, whatever it is. I have ADHD too, so I need a schedule, but I hate a schedule. So I'm I hate myself. I'm not sure of the senior photography market in Dallas, but do you have seasonality? Is there a time of year that you're busier than normal, or is it year round your business?
Absolutely. It's seasonal. In the Dallas area, we typically don't shoot, or I don't, in July and August, because you have so many 100-degree plus days in a row. So it's too hot. For January and February, it's usually really cold. We may have ice. So most people, everything, it is a dead kind of deal. There's no real flowers or anything like that. It's just dry and cold, and we don't get snow here. We get ice and just cold. So it's not pretty, aesthetically. Yeah. So I actually have gotten to a place where I take those months off, just because I've been able to scale, and I think, in relation to the last question you asked me, scaling is so important. And, I find in helping and in coaching, other photographers that, some, and it's totally okay, but they don't even know what scaling means, don't even know what it means to scale your business, which is just to make the same amount of money but work less, or to make more but work less. And so for me, once I got to a point where I was booked, I was really overwhelmed because I worked every single day, like you said, so many hours a week. I was making really good, money and profits, but there's only so many clients you could take. Once you get to the point, as a photographer, where and I'm not saying I was ever like close to, to burnout, but, my family was saying, I really don't like you in the fall because of, and I was just, and at first that was kind of a joke. And then it became, well, what do I do? Because if I want to make more money next year, I don't have any room to put what I have. So either have to raise my prices again. So I think, this is kind of getting way ahead for photographers that are just starting out. But I think if you should have goals of being successful enough to scale your business and start to dream about other ways of income through your business, which is what you've done. And what I've done is we just created different streams, of financial gain. We were already doing, and that allows you to have the balance. So choices for photographers are either just work less and don't make as much money, and some are okay with that. Like, if I'm good with this amount, great, go for it. But the ones who are really struggling, who work just so many hours to make, exactly, what they want, or, what they need to live month to month, then you're going to have to do something, and raise prices and learn how to do that, or find another stream of income, take on another niche or something like that.
I also think that's interesting because it's, for me, when we see people first starting out, what you don't realize is your time on the shoot is basically magic. That's where you make the money. That 1 hour photo shoot or whatever it is, that's where you make the money. What you can do is outsource the editing or the culling for a lot less than what you would make if you were going to do another shoot. So that's how I scaled. I was lucky, actually. Well, I say lucky, but I was sick. It was right around the holiday times. It was year 2. My sister ended up getting an editor because everyone was like, I need my holiday card. And I was like, I like this. They're like, this is great. And they were, so I ended up finding an editor that I trained in my style. But what that freed me up was for those hours I was editing, I could do more shoots. And same thing when 2020 hit, like I actually hired an associate photographer for my family sessions. So I couldn't photograph as much. So I was like, that is a way. There's a lot of different ways that you can scale your business, but like going into it, pricing yourself right so you can outsource, and thinking about it, coaching or doing something else. So do you have any red flags if someone's emailing you, or you get a sense to where you're like, oh boy, this is not going to be the right client for me? Or do you think you can always turn them to your like advantage and treat them the way, but if you're like, oh, I know this person is going to be right, I'm going to ignore their email for 5 days.
This is kind of a two-part answer, because there's really not a client. I actually like the challenge of a client that I think may be difficult. Now, difficult to me is not their personality or anything like that, is what I'm trying to say. Difficult to me is wanting something for not very much. Right. So I think this is like, I'll answer 2 different questions. So people that I know are willing to pay, but just difficult, then I actually enjoy that part of it, because, and I tell photographers all the time, people are going to buy what they want more than what they need. So when somebody calls and says, well, I just need a few digitals, a lot of photographers get really discouraged about that. Well, I just need a few digitals. We don't need much. We just want to do whatever. I'm really happy about that. I love the challenge because they haven't seen what I can do in themselves. Now they've seen my work. They say, I love your work, but they haven't seen my work in them, with them in the image. And so I don't mind that. A lot of photographers get discouraged. They say, what do I do? They only want this much. What should I charge them? I have a lot of strategy, so I don't share my prices online at all or anything like that. I get photographers all the time that say, why don't you share a process? And the reason is because I give so much value outside of the first phone call. And if I just tell somebody, hey, my packages, start at $1,700 and blah, blah, blah. They didn't get all the stuff they're going to get with me. They don't get, extra locations and all the surprises and, what's around the corner, what's in door number 3, kind of, like Chris has all these surprises. And when you add all that up, and then I do in-person sales, I do a slideshow. There's a strategy to how you sell in person. So they don't get all that. If I tell them right up front, then they're going to shop me around. And so I really do like the challenge of that. Now, if the client just doesn't want much, and that this is going to, like, photographers can tell, like, this is going to drive me crazy, whatever it is, and they're so apprehensive. Well, do I take it on? I don't want to lose the money, but I'm really not getting paid that. If you feel really anxious about the client, then I've practiced. It's not easy at first, but I've recommended them. So when I talked about competition and knowing my competition, I've recommended them to somebody who did, because what they're doing, they're taking up space that you could fill somebody else in there that is happy with you, that'll pay more. And I think photographers in the beginning really have a hard time letting clients go. Yeah. But if you'll get used to letting those clients go so you can pick up a better client, once you get used to that and you're providing, good, images, and you're providing, a value to your client, then I the ones that really I know just aren't, I'll let those go, and I'll keep the ones that are, I think are really interested.
Yeah, I like that, because I feel like, one, I love the fact that you sort of like, I love treating it like a challenge. Like, I love the ones that, all right, you just don't really know my work and you don't really know what you want, kind of thing, or you need. But the ones that give you that, the sense of like, this one's going to suck. It's not just going to suck for the shoot. It's going to suck leading up to it. It's going to shoot when you're editing it. It's going to suck afterwards. It can take 2 months of where you're like, and so that dread and that negativity, rain cloud, I call it, over my business is very distracting from getting those clients that I want and serving the ones that really appreciate me. So it can take more than the quick win of the cash. It can take a lot more out of your business than you think.
That is such a great point. It really can.
Yeah. And so it's just 2 months. It's just 2 months. I bet you have some really funny shoots of experiences of what's gone on, whether or not you've set this up as a surprise for somebody, but I have a feeling that you do. What is like something crazy that happened on a shoot, or that you want to share? Or you probably have loads. I bet you do.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, golly. I'll do one. It was, this will make everybody feel better about themselves. I was shooting a high school girl, and we were shooting next to a canal, just a real, just a beautiful canal. I had just bought, I wasn't educated at the time, and I'm one of those purchasers that the more expensive it is, that's the equipment I'll buy, which is not the way you should go. Anybody listening should not do that, but I did. And so I bought the Chromax, all the lighting and stuff. I bought studio lights that were $2,000 a piece, but I took them on the road. I didn't know that they kind of only went in studio and they could blow over and break, and there was no way really fix it, just kind of out, whatever. So I used to carry everything around in a wagon. I'd shoot off-camera flash for every single image. So I'm really glad I learned natural light and all that stuff. But everything was in a wagon. I propped it up against this rock while I was shooting this girl. And so I'd shot, then I went on the other side of her and shot. And as I was looking through my camera, I noticed my wagon was rolling towards the canal, in the canal. And 11.
That's not funny. This is making me very sad.
Well, here's the good part. $11,000 worth of equipment was wet, and it was like literally when I pulled it out of the water, trying to turn on, just sparked, and it was done. Here's what will make you feel better about my situation, so don't feel sorry for me.
Okay.
About a week before, my dad had told me, you have all this expensive equipment. Chris, you have to get it insured. You have to get it insured. I was like, Dad, I'm good. Like, insurance costs money. I'm not there yet. I'm not. So, Chris, if anything happens, you'll just kick yourself. You got to. So I listened to my dad's advice. I got insurance the day before that happened. One day before all.
I bet the insurance agent's like, give me proof of this.
They did, and they really did. And what was funny is the girl called and the mom, and we took pictures and videos of, because I went in after it. It was the first segment, and I was so nervous. I said, sorry, guys, I got to go in after it. So I jumped in there, got all my clothes on. So we have pictures of me head to toe, soaking wet, jeans, shirt, all my equipment wet, everything wet. And I continued on the shoot because I was so embarrassed or whatever. But
you gave that person a story.
She said, are you sure we don't want to reschedule? I go, no, I'm good. I can do it without the lights. I got insurance. It's not going to matter. So I went, and this was early March, about this time of the year in Texas. It was about 55, 60 degrees. I was soaking wet. I was freezing, but I made it. And she loved the pictures, and I continued. But that's one that I still tell on shoots that other people seem to appreciate. So
I don't. I'm having a heart attack for you. But like, I'm so glad that you have insurance. I mean, it's funny because I've had insurance for 14 years and paying out the wazoo and never claimed. So like, at least it makes me feel better. Like they make money from me and then they don't make money from you.
Yeah. Insurance is really important for new photographers. It really is. I learned a valuable lesson. I was so fortunate that I recouped all that money and bought the same equipment back. But I never would have been able to if I was at, paying that, $59, whatever it was a month.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
It is so worth it. Yeah. We have, I'll probably put it in the show notes. I've got an article on like the types of insurance, because it's not just one, it's liability. It's, so I think that my heart is still racing. I'm like, you're a deer going in. Like,
I don't wish that on anybody, for sure.
No. Like, did you ever take the wagon out again, or no? I
did. I bought new equipment. Then when I learned,
put the brake on,
and learned, I sold all that real expensive equipment and bought myself a camera that I really, really love. And I downsized everything. And learned to do it that way. So it's a lot easier now.
Yeah, I do wheel out, if I do family shoots, I have like a suitcase because it has because I did have the trolley, and then I was just like, so it's funny, you end up learning through the hard way. Yeah. We all learn the hard way. So we're getting close to wrapping up. So what is the one tip that you would give, say your son decides he wants to go into photography? What's the one thing you would tell him to do?
I don't want to sound too cliche, but cliches are made up for a reason because most of them are true. There is a lot of adversity along the way. And, when I say, you have to think like an entrepreneur, study what entrepreneurs do. The one thing they all have in common is that they failed a million times and they never gave up. And I can attribute 100% of my success to the day that I was so down about photography. Like I said, I was taken advantage of. I didn't think people appreciated my work. Every time I thought I did something good, I would look on Instagram and compare myself to somebody else. I just went, they're so much better than me. Went through all that stuff. But when I really decided that I was going to put a strategy in place and I was going to really start to put in the work, I thought, this is going to be better. And it is, but it's not. You still have to go through the pains of when you raise your prices, you're going to lose some clients. I talk to photographers all the time. Well, I don't want to lose clients. Well, then you're in the wrong business, because you also don't want to be known as an affordable photographer, as the guy.
Also, like right now, I guarantee you're paying them to shoot. Yeah. They're not a client. They're like a donation.
That's right. And a lot of people do. And I tell people this all the time. Everything they think that the only skill you need is to take pictures and be really good with your camera and editing, and that's the skill. I tell people all the time, everything is a learned skill. So when you raise your prices, that is not a skill. You can raise them without any skill. Now, selling, explaining to people why you raise your prices, that is a skill. And that is one that I do better than most because I practice it. I've gone through the awkward part of standing in front of the mirror and listening to myself pitch why I raising the prices, or talking to my kids or letting them, hear it and get, feedback from, is this believable? I mean, it's authentic, but am I saying it right? And everything is practice. Everything is practice, not just the camera. And so people really have anxiety is, one, they don't think to bring value. Like everything I do, whether it's post content, whether it's on my shoot, whether it's experience, I'm bringing value to my client. The only thing in my head is, how can I add more value? How can I add more value? And the other thought in my head is, once I know I add value, how do I explain to them that, hey, this is the value you're getting from me that you won't get somewhere else. And that's why my prices are what they are, because you'll see something different working than me and something else.
Yeah. I think it's becoming confident, and that does actually take time. You said that you practice in the mirror. If anyone's listening and they're trying to raise their prices and they like, oh, I don't, get on the phone with people because I have a phone phobia. But so I just crafted an email, and I actually, like you said, you were authentic. When I raised my prices, because I wasn't charging a travel fee into New York City and it was costing me money. And when I had my kid, I was like, this is taking an extra 3 hours. You don't realize things until you you're like, oh, wow, this is, and people pay. Like I said I had to reevaluate because now I have a child, and I realized it was taking me 3 hours, $50 in parking, and it was the tolls. And they were like, okay, I'll pay the $250. Like it was no big deal. Like it was able to pay the travel fee, So I think sometimes if they're asking about cost and why I have now a travel fee, I'll tell them why I have a travel fee. I'm not hiding anything. So, but it's, the first couple of times when you send that response, you're like it still is hard. It's practice.
Right. And sound unsure. And, I think it hurts not to have a travel fee, a session fee, some people call it. It's so, if you're a professional photographer, then people have session fees. Like I would almost think it hurts a photographer not to have one, because I think they're looked upon as somebody that's doing it as a hobby.
I think it depends on your prices, right? Because that you do in-person sales, was I've always done included the digitals and a print credit, and mine have already, in 2010 they were $950 for a family shoot. Like so, but how you articulate it is creative session fee. The digitals, they're actually priced something, and then if they want to buy more and they want to upgrade, they can. But I think that it is correct. Is like you have to have the differentiate. If you are including your digitals at the moment, they are product, and your session fee should be separate, not all inclusive in a session fee. It's completely different. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think you have to be used to saying the same thing to every client. There's so many clients that say one thing because they're not prepared. They forget what they said, then another one, and they really never get better. Because every time is different. They try to remember what they said last time. Do something different. You really have to be, you have to be authentic, but you have to have an authentic script.
Yeah.
So it's authenticity combined with say the same thing every single time.
Yeah.
You get so much more confident in it. And then it's really easy. And then you start to believe it yourself where, hey, you start to understand, if I lose a client, it's only paying $500, but I gain one that pays $1,500.
Right.
It's okay. Like, do the math. You don't need that one. If that leaves and this one comes, that's 3 clients in one that you just said.
Yeah.
So,
and also, I think when you're first starting out, for example, with, when I was first starting out with newborns and, people would ask me the same question, when should you have, when do you have it? And so I started incorporating that into a phone call, or like I actually in my initial email, so that I'm answering any questions. So I look like, oh, wow, she knows what she's talking about. Have it on a blog post of frequently asked questions. But definitely you'll start to see a thread of people are asking the same questions. put it on a Word document and start writing it out. So when someone, if you're on a phone call or an email, you have the answer there. And it's not like, I don't know what to say or I don't know what to write, because it's already there, if that makes any sense. But
yeah, that's it.
This has been absolutely amazing, Chris. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tell everyone where, we will put it in the show notes, but if you can end by telling everybody how we can find you and learn more from you.
Yeah, so just my Instagram is the way now. That's just my first and my last name with the, I don't know what you call the underline deal between names, but it's just
underline.
Chris Shabay on Instagram. And
Perfect.
I encourage people all the time. I was a new photographer once. I went through those pains. You can shoot me a DM with your questions. I will answer for free. It's not going to cost you anything. I love helping new photographers because I went through all the pains, and it's the thing I really do enjoy the most is progress. I tell people all the time, the one thing that makes everybody happy, everybody's got their, own definition of happy, but the one thing we all have in common, no matter what we do, is progress makes us happy. And I want to make people happy by helping them progress faster than they would if they didn't talk to me. So I'm open. Thank you so much. This was a blast. I wish you the best. I hope I can come on again, but this is just amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. This is this really, really, and definitely take him up on that, because even his Instagram is packed full of advice. So really, really appreciate it.